My name is Helen Folks, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Louisiana Department of Education Office of Nutrition Support training on the National School Lunch Program and Offer versus Serve. The purpose of this training is to make sure CNP operators are informed in making menu-related decisions, as well as to reinforce the understanding of the NSLP meal pattern and Offer versus Serve. First up is an overview of the 2018 final rule, which was vacated, canceling menu flexibilities that were put in place for milk, whole grains, and sodium. It is important to understand that USDA is allowing for a transitional period for going back to the 2018 final rule. That information will be provided and discussed after the overview of what is intended as an end goal for the CNP meal patterns is provided. Many of the waivers that were in place to allow flexibilities in the menu pattern to continue are no longer in effect for school year 22-23. With that in mind, and given the challenges of the pandemic and supply chain issues that are still affecting operations, a transitional plan has been developed by USDA to allow for time in the development of guidelines in replacement of the vacated 2018 final rule meal pattern. To explain the reason for the elimination of menu flexibilities, on April 13, 2020, the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland found a procedural error in the promulgation of the 2018 final rule. This previously allowed meal pattern flexibilities for milk, whole grains, and sodium requirements. As a result, the flexibilities described in the 2018 rule were vacated or canceled. As a result, the flexibilities described, these are the very flexibilities that we'll discuss in terms of the transitional standards. USDA designed the Child Nutrition Program transitional standards for milk, whole grains, and sodium, and this establishes the standards for school years 2022, 23, and 2023-2024. This gives schools some time to transition in the short term, and meanwhile, USDA is working to develop long-term nutrition standards based on the newest dietary guidelines for Americans. And this is part of also extensive input from a wide range of partners that will work for schools, families, and industry alike. USDA expects to publish a proposed rule on the updated standards this fall. What this means for school year 22-23 is that flavored milk may be low fat. In addition, unflavored milk must be offered and may be either fat-free or 1%. In terms of sodium, the weekly levels for breakfast and lunch will remain the same as the target 1 sodium levels for school year 22-23. The final transitional standard requirements for whole grains includes that at least 80% of the grains served in school lunch and school breakfast over the course of the week must be whole grain rich. It is important to note that whole grain rich recipes will not have to change. The definition of a whole grain rich remains that half or 50% of the grain offered in a product is whole grain rich, while the other half may be regular white enriched grain. So essentially, most of your recipes and products do not have to change. What the 80% rule means in practice is that if you are offering a 10-ounce portion of grain over the course of the week, which would typically look like a 2-ounce portion of grain per day, then on 1 day per week, a 2-ounce portion of grain may be enriched white grain. The rest of the grain offered over the course of the week then must be whole grain rich. This will be an option whether you decide to use the 2-ounce per week whole grain rich flexibility to allow for certain preferences like gumbo with white rice to be offered, or if it is simply an allowance when taking into consideration challenges experienced intermittently with deliveries as a result of supply chain issues. When a substitute item that is not whole grain rich is provided, this will allow that item to be served once as a 2-ounce portion over the course of the week, while still meeting whole grain rich transitional standards for the Child Nutrition Program meal patterns. Now, just as an overview in terms of sodium for school year 23-24, a very marginal decrease in sodium at a level of 10% reduction will be in place for school lunch only next school year. But what this means is that largely child nutrition program operators will need to take a look at bid specifications for processed items and make sure seasonings and other items that are provided like ketchup, mustard, other things added to recipes after preparation are not causing the sodium levels to be exceeded. Child nutrition program operators have expressed concerns about possible challenges in purchasing and receiving food through their normal channels. Specifically, some SFAs have experienced unanticipated cancellation of food and supply contracts, lack of availability of certain foods, unexpected substitutions for food products, increases in food and supply prices, and failed deliveries, sometimes being half or more of items requested during peak supply chain disruptions. As a result, some SFAs are voicing concerns about their ability to obtain the types, amounts, and variety of foods that are needed to serve reimbursable meals consistent with the planning that's taken place. USDA and the state agency are working to identify solutions to these issues. USDA has developed training resources to help CNP operators navigate supply chain issues and continue to provide nutritious school meals. Resources include a summary and table of flexibilities, how flexibility should be used in practice, and how to overcome school meal supply chain issues when menu planning. Team Nutrition released the Planning for a Dynamic School Environment webpage to provide valuable information about meal service flexibilities and procurement strategies. Links to these resources are included on this slide and will be posted under slides on the LouisianaFitKids.com website within a couple of weeks of this presentation. Next up, we will focus on the National School Lunch Program meal pattern, starting with an explanation of food components versus food items. Components are the food groups that must be offered every day with each meal. At lunch, 5 components must be offered, and those components include milk, grain, fruit, vegetable, and meat alternate. Foods from each of these 5 components must be offered on the serving line every day. If the food item you were planning to serve for a component was not delivered, is not finished cooking, it runs out before meal service is over, you have to replace it on the serving line with a food item from the same component. The components required for each meal must be available to all children from the first student to the last, even though all children may not actually decide to select each component. If a child comes through the serving line and the line was missing one or more components, the school would not be able to claim reimbursement for that child's meal. If this happens frequently, it can add up to a big loss of money for your program. As an example, if the fruit being served with lunch is a whole apple and you run out of apples during meal service, you would have to offer some other type of fruit in its place so that all children had the opportunity to choose fruit with their lunch. Now let's talk about food items and how they are different than components. A food item is the specific food that is offered to meet the component or group requirement. In this slide, strawberries are the food item being offered to meet the fruit component. Toast is the food item offered to meet the grain component, and milk is the food item offered as the milk component. By the way, as you will learn later in this presentation, most of the components or food groups can be met with lots of different food items. However, fluid milk is the only food item that can be offered to meet the milk component. Now that we've identified the difference between food components and food items, let's review each of the 5 components in more detail. The first component we will talk about is the meat alternate component. Meat alternate is a component at lunch, but it's not a component at breakfast. Food items are classified in the meat alternate component group based on their protein content. You will notice that not all food items in this category are actually meat. That is why we also use the phrase meat alternate. Meat alternates are non-meat food items that provide the amount of protein needed for children. We use the words ounce equivalent to indicate how much meat alternate a student is getting with their lunch. USDA says that students must have at least 1 or 2 ounce equivalent servings of meat at lunch, depending on their grade level. I'm going to explain what ounce equivalent means on the next slide. To find out how many ounce equivalents a serving of meat alternate provides, you can look at this in a few different ways with different sources. For commercially prepared meat items, such as pre-made hamburger patties, chicken nuggets, pizza, corn dogs, etc., a CN label will tell you how many ounce equivalents of meat the item provides in one serving. If a commercially prepared item does not have a CN label, the manufacturer can send a product formulation statement or a signed letter on company letterhead with the information. For meat or meat alternate items made from scratch, such as homemade spaghetti sauce, baked chicken, etc., the standardized recipe will indicate the ounce equivalents of meat alternate each serving provides. A standardized recipe has been formulated to make sure that when preparing foods according to the directions, each student will receive the correct amount of each component. That's why it is so important to carefully follow recipes. The food buying guide will also tell you how many ounces of meat alternate different meat items will provide once you learn how to use the guide and complete the calculations. So the question comes up, how should meat alternates be documented on food production records? Well, typically meats are documented in ounces based on the product yield. Occasionally, they are listed in cups or tablespoons, but depending on the type of food. Children in grades K through 5 and 6 through 8 must have at least 1 ounce of meat alternate per day with lunch, while grades 9 through 12 must have a minimum of 2 ounces per day. In general, you'll want to refer to the food buying guide and look for the specific item you are using to decide what unit of measure to use when documenting the amount prepared as well as the serving size. Refer to the CN label or product formulation statement for processed items to determine the amount of meat alternate and then measure for use in documentation. Let's discuss the difference between ounce equivalents versus ounces. So when we start out with ounces, 1 physical ounce generally weighs 28 grams. This will hold true no matter what item is being measured. It could be metal, feathers, clay, dirt, plastic, clothing, or food. If you have 1 physical ounce of something, it weighs 28 grams. Many of you probably already know this from weighing products for different recipes. However, when we say how much meat a food item contributes to the meat alternate component, we can't always use physical ounces. For some meat alternate foods, it takes either more or less than 1 physical ounce to provide a 1 ounce equivalent serving. Think about a chicken nugget that is made of chicken and coated in breading. If you weigh that nugget, the weight will include the added ingredients in addition to meat. And this could be grain, it could be other things that are added for seasonings. Look at this example of a grilled chicken patty. The patty weighs 3.8 ounces. Note that the crediting information reports a 3 ounce equivalent meat alternate. 0.8 ounces of this product does not credit as meat or meat alternate for the child nutrition program. Why do you think this is the case? Well, the reason that it credits as only 3 meat alternate is because the manufacturer added other ingredients such as water, cornstarch, salt, and vinegar. Those ingredients weigh 0.8 ounces. Also remember that the percentage of fat in the meat will affect the yield or crediting. So when using fresh products, use the food buying guide to determine the amount of raw product to purchase in order to serve a cooked product that meets crediting requirements for that meal. For example, an 80-20 or 80% lean and 20% fat ground beef will credit less lean meat per pound than a 90-10 or 90% lean and 10% fat product. So the leaner the product, the more credit you're going to get ounce for ounce. This slide lists some food items that are frequently used to meet the meat alternate component, along with the serving size of the food item needed to count as 1 ounce equivalent of meat. For actual meat, which includes beef, chicken, pork, and fish, it takes 1 physical ounce of lean meat to equal 1 ounce equivalent. However, the component credit of the cooked meat is dependent on the fat content of the meat. Always reference the food buying guide to determine how much lean meat is creditable based on the specific item. For example, an 80-20 ground beef, which is 20% fat, is going to credit for less lean meat than a 90-10 ground beef, which is only 10% fat. You can't include bone, skin, or breading when weighing the meat. Cheese, nuts, and seeds are the same. 1 physical ounce of cheese, nuts, or seeds equals 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. Now, what about peanut butter? Well, it takes 2 tablespoons of peanut butter or sunflower seed butter to provide a 1 ounce equivalent serving of meat alternate. It takes 1/4 cup of beans without their liquid to get 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. And it takes 1/2 of a large egg to equal 1 ounce equivalent of meat. For yogurt, it takes 1/2 cup in order to provide 1 ounce equivalent of meat. And if you think about it, 1/2 cup of yogurt will weigh well over 100 grams. So it takes a much heavier portion of yogurt to give us just 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. Next, we will go over the grain component. Remember, grain is a meal pattern component for both breakfast and lunch. With both meals, all grains must be whole grain rich. Remember, this is because the 2018 final rule requiring that only half of the grains be whole grain rich was vacated. Now, remember that we are in a transitional period. So for the transitional requirements, 80% of the items offered must be whole grain rich, and the other 20% can be enriched white grain. Food items that are used to meet the grain component can be divided into 2 categories: baked goods and cereal grains. Baked goods include breads, buns, biscuits, crackers, chips, and taco shells made with whole corn, tortillas, cornbread, cinnamon rolls, and other items. Cereal grains include rice, pasta, hot cereal, and dry cereal. Even though we call them cereal grains, they aren't all what we commonly think of as breakfast cereal. Occasionally, there is confusion about potato products because outside of the school meal programs, potato products are commonly thought of as starches. Sometimes this causes some confusion and people want to count them toward the grain component, but potato products never count toward meeting that grain component. Potato products such as mashed potatoes and French fries are vegetables and can be used to meet the starchy vegetable component. Similar to meat alternates, we measure the serving size of grain food items in ounce equivalents. We have to use ounce equivalents because sometimes it takes either more or less than 1 physical ounce of a grain food item to equal a 1 ounce serving of grain. If the grain item we are serving contains only that grain and has no other ingredients, 1 physical ounce of the product is a 1 ounce equivalent serving of grain. Dry cereal grains such as rice, pasta, grits, oatmeal, and dry breakfast cereals with no extra ingredients like marshmallows can be measured like this because in their dry form, they do not contain any other ingredient. But what about baked goods such as breads, biscuits, buns, crackers, cornbread, cinnamon rolls, and taco shells? These products aren't just made of grain. The grain is mixed with other ingredients such as sugar, baking powder, oil, dry milk, and other things. So how do you know how many ounce equivalents of grain these foods count as? You can't tell just by weighing them or looking at the weight on the label. If the food item has a CN label, the label will tell you how many ounce equivalents of grain the food item provides. And some examples of items that may have CN labels would be toaster pastries, chicken nuggets, and pizza. A standardized recipe will usually also tell you how many ounce equivalents of grain the food item provides. But what about if the product, like sliced bread, a pre-made roll or biscuit, a taco shell, does not have a CN label or product formulation statement? In those cases, you can look up the product on a chart made by USDA, or it can be located by looking up the Exhibit A grain requirements for child nutrition programs. When completing production records, make sure to write the serving size of bread products in ounce equivalents, such as a 2-ounce equivalent whole grain rich roll. And also the serving size for rice and pasta should be in cups, such as 1/2 cup of rice. This is what the Exhibit A grain requirements for child nutrition programs looks like. There are additional footnotes that are not included on this page. You may access the Exhibit A chart by clicking the linked title on this slide. Note that when using this chart, you will use the middle column for crediting information for school meals. You will notice that grains are grouped based on how they credit per ounce of product weight. Items in Group G, like toaster pastries and cereal bars, credit at a lower ounce equivalent per ounce of product weight than something like bread. For example, a whole grain toaster pastry requires a 2-ounce product weight to credit for 1-ounce equivalent bread grain, while a slice of whole grain bread will credit for 1-ounce equivalent based on a 1-ounce product weight. Fruit is another component that is part of both the breakfast and lunch meal patterns. Food items that may be used to meet the food requirement include fresh fruit, frozen fruit without added sugar, fruit canned in juice, white syrup, or water. Dried fruit, such as raisins or dried cranberries, counts toward the fruit component. Fruit juice also counts toward the juice component. If juice is served, it must be 100% juice. It cannot be a product that is a juice blend or a punch unless it is a fruit punch made with 100% juice. No more than half of the weekly fruit requirement can be in the form of juice. Whole fruit has an additional benefit, such as fiber, that juice does not have. So it's important that students are given fruit and not just fruit juice. All schools have to offer 1 cup of fruit component each morning at breakfast. When I say 1 cup of fruit component, I mean the fruit and or juice combined. A school could give the students 1 cup of solid fruit, being canned, fresh, or frozen, every day and not provide juice, and that would be fine. But a school could not give the students 1 cup of fruit juice every day because that would exceed the 50% requirement over the course of the week. The serving size of fruit is always measured in cups. To figure out the serving size of the fruit item, you can use the CN label for a few pre-made products, such as frozen fruit juice pops. Typically, you will use the food buying guide, though. So for example, if you were serving whole banana at a case count of 150, the food buying guide tells us that the amount of fruit each banana provides is 1/2 cup. If you were writing this food item on a production record, you might write 1 each next to banana, but you need to include in parentheses 1/2 cup. Most fruit servings credit as the actual volume served, meaning if you provide 1/2 cup of sliced pears, it credits as 1/2 cup of fruit. Dried fruits are different than other fruit because they credit as twice the volume served. So if raisins were on the menu to provide a student with 1/2 cup of fruit component, you would only serve the student 1/4 cup of raisins. The vegetable component is part of the requirement in the lunch meal pattern. Vegetables can also meet the fruit component at breakfast. If vegetable juice is offered, it counts as part of the weekly juice limit, being no more than 50% of the component that can be provided as juice. The vegetable component is unique because it is divided into subgroups. The poster on this slide is available on the Institute of Child Nutrition website, and it's important to post this wherever staff is making decisions about menus or how to make menu substitutions. There are 5 subgroups of vegetables, being dark green, red orange, bean, peas or legumes, starchy, and other vegetables. Vegetables are placed into subgroups based on their nutrient content. The vegetables in each subgroup have similar vitamin and mineral content. Color is a general guide to where a vegetable belongs, but does not always determine the subgroup. So for example, broccoli and green beans are both green, but broccoli is in the dark green subgroup and green beans are in the other subgroup because they provide different nutrients. Lunch menus must contain vegetables from each of these subgroups during the week. The vegetable subgroups can be offered in any order as long as the weekly requirements are met. It is important to know what vegetables belong in each subgroup so the meal pattern is planned to meet the weekly requirements, and appropriate substitutions can be made when needed. For example, if a vegetable is missing from today's produce delivery, food service staff need to know what other vegetables are in the same subgroup so they can make an appropriate substitution. Beans and peas must be offered weekly as a vegetable because legumes are a subgroup. If beans are offered more frequently, they can be counted in the meat component or the vegetable component, but never the both at the same time. So an example of this would be red beans and rice with sausage. So I always try to emphasize that when serving red beans and rice, you have to decide whether it's going to be a meat or whether it's going to be a vegetable. If you're going to count that as a meat on a Monday, then you will need to add another 1/2 cup of some type of bean or legume during the week in order to meet the vegetable subgroup requirements. The serving size of vegetables is always measured in cups. To figure out the serving size of the vegetable item, you will typically use the food buying guide. Occasionally, a pre-made product containing vegetables may have a CN label. Most fruit servings credit as the actual volume served, meaning if you provide 1/2 cup of canned corn, it credits as 1/2 cup of vegetable. Raw leafy salad greens are different than other vegetables because they credit as half the volume served. So if romaine lettuce was on the menu to provide a student with 1/2 cup of the vegetable component, you must serve the student 1 complete physical cup of romaine lettuce. The minimum creditable serving of vegetables is 1/8 cup. 1 cup milk or 8 fluid ounces must be offered to all students in all grade levels at breakfast and lunch every day. 2% milk and whole milk are not allowed in any flavor or unflavored. Students must be given at least 2 options to choose from at each meal service. However, 1 option must be unflavored milk. The 2 milk options that must be offered at each meal include first the unflavored option that can be either fat-free or 1% unflavored milk. And then the second option, flavored milk, may be offered, most commonly being strawberry or chocolate milk, which may be fat-free or 1% during the transitional meal pattern period. And just to make sure it's clear, if you were to offer 2 options as unflavored, where you had fat-free, unflavored, and 1% unflavored, that is acceptable. But you do have to make sure that it's available to all that are served in that serving line during that time frame. As a reminder, fluid milk is the only food item that may be used to meet the milk component. Other food items that are considered dairy items, such as eggs, cheese, and even yogurt, will not meet the milk component. What component group would these food dairy items belong to? Well, these items belong to the meat alternate group and must be credited based on the food buying guide. Other foods are foods that do not meet any component requirements. They may be used as condiments, seasoning, or to improve student acceptability or participation in meal services. Calories, saturated fat, and sodium must be counted in weekly nutrient averages. There is a list of other foods in the USDA Food Buying Guide linked on this slide. Notice that pork bacon is not considered meat and does not count toward the meat alternate component at lunch or the grain component at breakfast. This is because there is little protein in bacon. It is primarily fat. If bacon is served with any meal, it must be considered an extra item. Bacon has a lot of calories, fat, and sodium too, so it typically can't even be served as an extra since there are weekly calorie, fat, and sodium limits for each meal pattern. Remember that these items may affect the nutritional content of meals and the dietary specification outcome during the administrative review. Use care to ensure balanced menus in terms of nutritional content on average over each week and to ensure fat, sodium, and calories will not exceed USDA guidelines when these other foods are added to menus. When making substitutions for failed deliveries of certain food items, make sure you substitute within the same component group. When it comes to vegetables, be sure to substitute within the same vegetable subgroup. If a failed delivery or supply chain issue may result in a vegetable subgroup component not being met, plan to substitute with another vegetable and apply for a meal pattern waiver on the CNP website. Next up is a brief review of the lunch meal pattern and a discussion of how to use offer versus serve at lunch to ensure reimbursable meals are served and counted at the point of service. The lunch meal pattern that we touched on earlier includes 5 components which must be offered each day with lunch. They are milk, grain, fruit, vegetable, and meat alternate. Similar to breakfast, there are daily and weekly serving size requirements for each of the lunch components. However, there are no food item requirements at lunch. There are only component requirements. When reviewing the lunch meal pattern, check both the menu component rows on the left and the grade group columns at the top. The lunch meal pattern chart provides daily and weekly minimum serving sizes for each of the 5 menu components. Note that the serving size requirements vary by age and grade group. There is a K through 5 group, a 6 through 8 group, and an optional K through 8 group. Additionally, there is a 9 through 12 grade group. The serving size requirements go up for meats, vegetable, fruit, and grain based on the age grade group. The milk serving size is the same at 1 cup for all age grade groups. Note that as grade groups go up, the weekly requirement is greater. For example, K through 6 and 6 through 8 grade groups require a minimum of 1 ounce meat alternate daily, but the weekly requirement goes up in grade 6 through 8. The weekly requirement for meat for K through 5 is 8 ounces, while the weekly minimum requirement for 6 through 8 goes up to 9 ounces. It is important to remember that serving 1 ounce of meat every day for any grade would not meet the minimum weekly requirement, as it would only be 5 ounces. This is something to be aware of when menu planning and selecting standardized recipes for different grade groups. Offering 2 ounces of meat alternate per day tends to be a trend for all grade groups. However, I had heard of some systems doing a 1 ounce Wednesday menu for grades K through 8 to decrease food cost and allow for items like turkey taco filling to be served that require a high portion size for serving based on crediting for the product. This would not be true for grades 9 through 12 because a 2 ounce meat alternate portion is required every day. Remember that while there are no maximums on meat and grains, etc., in terms of ounces or cups, staying within the weekly calorie range is important to consider when menu planning. Note that the last two rows cover the weekly calorie range, saturated fat, and trans fat. While weekly calorie ranges increases for higher grades, the percentage of saturated fat maxes out at less than 10% of the calories, and trans fat must be 0 grams for all grade groups. Let's talk about offer versus serve for a moment. Offer versus serve is a concept that applies to menu planning and meal service. It allows students to decline some of the food offered in a reimbursable breakfast and also at lunch. The goals of offer versus serve are to reduce food waste and permit students to choose the foods they really want to eat. Your local school system will decide whether to use the offer versus serve provision for breakfast. If your school system utilizes offer versus serve at breakfast, the school will implement the guidelines you are learning about in this module. Now, USDA does not require any school or grade levels to utilize offer versus serve as breakfast. However, many schools will choose to implement it because of the food waste benefits. Now, offer versus serve does require students to take a minimum of 3 food items at breakfast. One of those food items must be 1/2 cup of fruit component. Now, when we're taking a look at lunch at the high school level, offer versus serve is required. And again, the key here would be 3 food components, and one of those food items and components must be 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable. An important part of offer versus serve as lunch is knowing what counts as a full component. A full component is the full serving size of the component. If you look at this chart, what is the full daily serving size for the vegetable component for grades K through 8? That would be 3/4 cup per day. Now, what about for grades 9 through 12? A full serving of vegetables would be 1 cup. If you look at the fruit component, what is the full daily serving size for grades 9 through 12? Now that is 1 cup. Well, what about for grades K through 8? That would be 1/2 cup. Now, what is the minimum full component of meat for grades 9 through 12? And that's a 2-ounce portion. The reason that this is important is that when a school allows offer versus serve and a student of any grade chooses 1/2 cup of vegetable as one component, or if a 9 through 12 grade student chooses a 1/2 cup of fruit as one component, this is not a full serving for those grade groups. Again, a full serving of vegetable is either 3/4 cup or 1 cup. A full serving of fruit for grades K through 8 is 1/2 cup. So for those grades, if a student takes 1/2 cup of fruit, that is the full serving size of the fruit component. But if a high school student takes 1/2 cup of fruit, that is not the full serving size. When the student takes a 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable, and this is not the full serving size of that component for their grade, the other 2 components they choose with offer versus serve must be the full serving. What is important to recognize is that in the relatively rare cases that a student picks a fruit and a vegetable and only one other food component, it is important to double check that tray. The first 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable counts toward the lunch requirement. And if a second fruit or vegetable is added to the tray and only one other component is on the tray, then double check that serving size. It would take 3/4 cup of vegetable for K through 8 or 1 cup vegetable for 9 through 12 to meet the second component requirement. If that second component is a fruit, then 1/2 cup counts as a full serving for K through 8, but a high schooler would be required to pick up 1 full cup of fruit. A third full component would then be required for the meal to be considered reimbursable. You can probably see here that staff serving students in 9 through 12 will require additional training on offer versus serve compared to those staff members serving grades K through 8. In order to ensure that all menu components are met for students who pick up more than 1 fruit or vegetable and a total of only 3 components, place a 100% fruit juice serving or a piece of fresh fruit like an apple at the end of the serving line. It is easy to add in the necessary quantity at the end of the line by keeping this close to the point of service. and thereby you wouldn't have to delay service on the line. Look at each menu as we go through the offer versus serve skills review. You'll want to pay attention to the grade level and the serving sizes. Please take a look at each meal the student selected. In this activity that's coming, you'll have only a few seconds to determine if it is a complete meal. First, ask yourself if the student picked up 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable minimum. And next, ask if 2 additional food items were selected. If yes, the meal is complete and you would check reimbursable on a sheet of paper. Otherwise, check not reimbursable after completing each section, and I will go over the answers. So let's test our skills. Student number 1, lunch menu number 1 is for K through 5. And it includes a sandwich that provides 2 full components, which is 2-ounce equivalent grain and 2-ounce equivalent meat alternate. The sandwich also provides a small portion of vegetable at 1/4 cup, but that is not a full component. Carrot sticks provide 1/2 cup red orange vegetable. The carrots, while not a full serving of vegetable component, will meet the requirement for 1/2 cup fruit vegetable. Note that when paired with the sandwich, there will be a full component serving of vegetable due to the 1/4 cup vegetable in the sandwich, which is lettuce and tomato. The fresh apple provides 1/2 cup of fruit, which is a full component serving size. And the milk choice provides 1 cup, which is a full component serving size. Student number 1 picked up 1/2 cup carrots in a sandwich. Is this meal reimbursable? Write yes or no next to number 1. Student number 2 picked up 1/2 cup apple and a sandwich. Is this meal reimbursable? Student number 3 picked up a 1/2 cup apple, a 1/2 cup carrots, and 1 cup milk. Remember that this is a K through 5 meal pattern when checking to see if this is a reimbursable meal. Student number 4 selected 1 cup of milk and 1 sandwich. Is that a reimbursable meal? And student number 5 picked up the sandwich and no other foods. Is that a reimbursable meal? So let's check our answers. Student number 1 picked up a reimbursable meal. The first question is, did the student pick up 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable? And the answer is yes, the student picked up 1/2 cup carrots. The second question is, did the student pick up at least 2 more components that are full serving sizes? And the answer to that is yes. It's important to note that the sandwich provides 1/4 cup vegetable in addition to 1/2 cup carrots for a total vegetable serving of 3/4 cup. So this does make up a reimbursable meal. Student number 2 picked up the sandwich and apple. The first question being, is there 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable? Yes, there's a 1/2 cup apple and 1/4 cup vegetable on the sandwich. Are there 2 additional full components? And the answer to that is yes. The sandwich provides 2-ounce meat and 2-ounce grain. Therefore, it's a reimbursable meal. Student number 3 picked up 1/2 cup carrots, 1/2 cup apple, and 1 cup of milk. Did the student pick up 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable? Yes, the student picked up 1/2 cup of carrots. Did the student pick up 2 additional full components? Yes, the milk is 1 cup and the fruit is 1/2 cup, and those are full servings for those components. Remember that this is a K through 5 menu and the serving sizes are lower for fruit in K through 5 than they would be for 9 through 12. Student number 4 picked up a sandwich and a milk. Did this student pick up 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable? No, so this meal would not be reimbursable. Now the student did pick up 3 full components. The sandwich and the milk provide 3 components, but without the required 1/2 cup serving of fruit or vegetable, the point of service clerk would need to ask the student to pick up a fruit or juice, which he or she hopefully keeps near the point of service. Once the full 1/2 cup serving of fruit or juice is picked up, the meal is reimbursable. Student number 5 picked up a sandwich and no other foods. Did the student pick up 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable here? Well, the answer to that is no, because the sandwich only includes 1/4 cup of vegetable. So this meal is not reimbursable. There are 3 food components on the tray, including meat, grain, and vegetable. And 2 of these are full component servings, being the 2-ounce grain and the 2 ounces of meat. If the point of service clerk adds a fruit or juice to the tray, the meal will be reimbursable. Okay, so this is lunch menu number 2, and this is for grades 6 through 8. There is spaghetti and meat sauce that provides 1 ounce grain, 2 ounces of meat, and 1/4 cup vegetable. The whole grain roll provides 1 ounce grain. The romaine salad provides 3/4 cup vegetable. The fresh fruit cup provides 1/2 cup fruit. And finally, the milk is a full 1 cup. So let's test our offer versus serve skills for this 6 through 8 grade group. Student number 1 picked up spaghetti and meat sauce and milk. Is this reimbursable? Student number 2 picks up spaghetti and meat sauce with a romaine salad. Is that reimbursable? Student number 3 picks up spaghetti and meat sauce and a roll. Is that reimbursable? Student number 4 picks up mixed fruit, milk, and romaine salad. Is that reimbursable? Now let's check our answers. Student number 1 did not pick up a reimbursable meal. The reason is that the student did not pick up 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable, which is always the first thing the point of service clerk will look for. There are 3 components, being the milk, spaghetti, which is the grain, and meat in the meat sauce. So 2 of these components are full servings, being the milk at 1 cup and the meat at 2 ounces. What should the point of service clerk do? Basically, they should just add a 1/2 cup of fruit, juice, or vegetable nearby to pick it up so that the meal could be reimbursable. Student number 2 picked up a minimum 1/2 cup vegetable. So our first checked for 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable is yes. And actually here, the romaine salad provides a full 3/4 cup serving of vegetable to meet that component requirement. The spaghetti sauce provides 2 ounces of meat, which is the second full component. And last, there is spaghetti, which is a grain component. Therefore, there is 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable, plus 2 full components, and the 3 components required are represented. This is a reimbursable meal. So here, did student number 3 pick up 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable? And no, they didn't. So this is not a reimbursable meal. They did have 3 components, but they did not have 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable present. Did student number 4 pick a minimum 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable? The answer to that is yes. The romaine cup is 3/4 cup vegetable. Now, are there an additional 2 or more full components? Well, in this example, yes, the fruit cup, milk, and romaine cup are all 3 full components, and this meal is reimbursable. Lunch menu number 3 is for the 9 through 12 grade group. It includes cheese pizza that provides 2 ounces of grain and 2 ounces of meat. Broccoli florets are provided at 1/2 cup vegetable, corn at 1/2 cup vegetable, cantaloupe at 1/2 cup fruit, and grapes at 1/2 cup fruit, and the milk choice is a full cup. Now remember that this is a 9 through 12 grade group menu, and the serving size requirements are quite a bit larger to meet component requirements, especially for fruits and vegetables. Student 1 picks up pizza and milk. Is this reimbursable? Student number 2 picks up pizza, broccoli, and milk. Is this reimbursable? Student number 3 picks up grapes and pizza. Is this reimbursable? Student number 4 picks up corn and pizza. Is this reimbursable? Student number 5 picks up grapes, broccoli, and cantaloupe. Is this reimbursable? Student number 6 picks up grapes, cantaloupe, and milk. Is this meal reimbursable? And student number 7 picks up grapes, corn, and milk. Is that reimbursable? Let's check our answers. For the first meal, did the student pick up a minimum 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable? And the answer is no. This meal is not reimbursable, even though there are 3 components, including meat alternate, grain, and milk. The second student meal is reimbursable. The broccoli provides 1/2 cup vegetable, and there are a minimum of 2 full added components. Student number 3 did pick up a reimbursable meal. The student picked up grapes to meet the 1/2 cup minimum fruit or vegetable and selected pizza, which provided 2 full components. Meal number 4 is reimbursable. The corn meets the 1/2 cup minimum vegetable, and the pizza provides 2 full additional components. For meal number 5, the student did pick up the minimum 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable. The 1/2 cup broccoli would be considered the minimum required 1/2 cup vegetable. However, the student did not pick up 2 full additional components after that 1/2 cup minimum fruit or vegetable was counted. So a full component of fruit would be 1 cup for grades 9 through 12. So the grapes and cantaloupe equal 1 fruit component. The second full component is missing, so this meal is not reimbursable. Student number 6 picked up a minimum 1/2 cup fruit with the grapes. So what are the other 2 full components? The total fruit on the tray is 1 cup, so that is a full component, and milk is 1 cup, but the third component type is missing. Once a 1/2 cup serving of fruit or vegetable is counted, 2 added full components must be present to equal 3 components represented on the tray. Student number 7 picked up a minimum 1/2 cup serving of fruit or vegetable. However, the student did not pick up an additional 2 full servings of a component. 1/2 cup grapes does not meet the full 1/2 cup serving required for fruit, and the 1/2 cup corn does not meet the 1 cup serving size for a vegetable. 1 cup of milk is the only serving size that meets that full component requirement. This meal is not reimbursable. Well, I hope everyone did well on our quiz about offer versus serve. I want to thank you for participating in this skill drill. I hope this improved your knowledge of the National School Lunch Program menu and offer versus serve. I'm going to take a brief pause just to review any chat box questions. So if you would like to ask any questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat box right now. And I will take a look. So it doesn't appear that we have any questions right now, but if you decide that there are questions that are specific to scenarios in your school district or specific to certain grade groups, please feel free to contact the Louisiana Department of Education Office of Nutrition Support at childnutritionprograms@la.gov or by calling 225-342-9661. I want to thank everyone for your time and attention during this training, and please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much.